You know, some books just explode onto the scene, right? But others, they're more like a quiet current, flowing under the surface, but changing everything. Today, we're diving into one of those quiet ones. It's a mysterious medieval book that ended up shaping one of the most explosive moments in history. So, let's figure out how this little manuscript managed to start a revolution.
Okay, so let's go back in time. We're in the mid-1300s, and this manuscript appears. But here's the thing. It's anonymous. Nobody knows who wrote it. And, get this, it's written in German, not Latin. For a deep theological book back then, that was a huge deal. The message inside was so pure and powerful that people started calling it a pearl of mystical thought. But for more than 100 years, it just sat there, kind of hidden away, a secret gem just waiting for someone to come along and see its potential.
And that right there is the big mystery we're tackling. How on earth does a forgotten book from the 1300s just pop back up nearly 200 years later and become a favorite of, well, Martin Luther, the guy who basically kicked off the entire Protestant Reformation? It's a wild story.
Right, so to really get why this book was such a game changer, we have to look at the guy who found it. Let's dive into the story of Martin Luther and his big discovery.
So let's set the scene. It's the early 1500s. Martin Luther's a young, brilliant theologian, but he's really frustrated. The official theology of the time, this thing called scholasticism, was all taught in Latin, and it was super complex, like a giant intellectual puzzle. For Luther, it felt cold and disconnected from real life. It just wasn't speaking to his soul, you know? He was hungry for something simpler, more direct, something that felt real.
And then, boom, he finds this book, and things start moving fast. In 1516, he gets his hands on part of it, just an incomplete copy, but he loves it so much he publishes it right away. Then, only 2 years later, a full version turns up. He publishes it again, and he's the one who gives it the name we still use, Theologia Germanica, which just means the German theology. You have to understand, for Luther, this book was exactly what he was looking for. It was the total opposite of that dry academic stuff he was so tired of. He just loved how simple and powerful it was. It cut through all the noise and gave him what he felt was missing, a straight, honest path to God that you could feel in your heart. So, what was in this book? What was the big idea that got Luther so fired up? Well, it really boils down to one single, pretty challenging idea.
The book itself puts it like this. Now, this is a really key idea. It's saying that the way to get enlightened isn't about adding stuff. Not more knowledge, not more rituals. Nope. It's about taking things away. It's a process of cleaning house, really. So, what exactly are we supposed to be getting rid of?
Well, the book has a name for the problem, eigenwillia. It basically translates to self-will, or even just I-ness. The author's whole point is that our biggest problem is that we're stuck inside our own heads, always focused on ourselves, our ego, our wants, our desires. And it's that constant me that cuts us off from God and from what's truly real.
So what's the solution? The book lays out a pretty clear path, really. First, you have to see this self-will in yourself. You have to admit it's there. Second, you have to consciously set it aside. It's like a surrender. And the blueprint for how to do this? The author says to look at the example of Christ. And if you follow that path of self-denial, the book says you become open to receiving this amazing thing it calls the manifestation of eternal goodness.
Now, it's really important to get this next part. This isn't about running off to a cave and hiding from the world. Not at all. The book is actually super practical. This idea of losing yourself isn't some selfish spiritual quest. It's a call to serve other people, to forget about yourself in the process of helping others. So it's all about changing how you live in the world, not about escaping it.
And because Luther gave this book his stamp of approval, it didn't just get a second chance, it absolutely exploded. It launched this incredible legacy that has lasted for hundreds of years.
So check this out, 189. What's that about? Well, someone in 1961 did a count, and they found at least 189 different published editions of this book. Just think about that. For any book to have that kind of staying power is amazing, but for an anonymous little book from the Middle Ages, that's just mind-blowing.
And we're not just talking about staying popular in Germany, its reach went global. Luther's version from 1518 became the source for tons of reprints and translations. We're talking English, Dutch, Latin, Swedish, but then it just kept going. Russian, Italian, even Chinese and Japanese. This little book went everywhere.
And its influence went way beyond just getting printed a lot. The ideas inside the German theology actually helped shape whole new spiritual movements, like Pietism, which was all about personal, heartfelt faith.
And it's not just some dusty old book on a shelf either. Scholars are still studying it today, trying to unpack its message and figure out why it had such a massive impact.
Okay, so that brings us to the big question, right? Why? Why does a 700-year-old book still stick around? What's its secret to staying relevant for so long?
I think at the end of the day, it's all about that core message. I mean, look, the cover has definitely changed over the years, right? From a handwritten manuscript to a modern book. But the idea inside, that's timeless. It taps into this deep human need to get beyond our own ego, to connect with something bigger than just ourselves. That's a feeling that just doesn't go out of style.
So I'll leave you with this final thought. We live in a world that's all about building your personal brand, right? Celebrating the self. So what can we, today, possibly learn from a 700-year-old book that says the absolute best thing you can do is to lose yourself? It's a tough question for sure, and that's probably why people are going to keep wrestling with the German theology for a very, very long time.